So nice to see you. We would like to now convene the February 26th, 27th, 2025 meeting of the work group to review the design and implementation of the teaching performance assessment. The Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act for a teleconference meeting requires that the group members who are attending the meeting via teleconference disclose if any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at the remote location, and the general nature of the member's relationship with such individual. Are there any disclosures from our members attending via Zoom?
No disclosures.
No disclosures.
No disclosures.
Thank you. Is that everyone?
No disclosures.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Work group members who are participating via Zoom must be visible at all times on camera. Please log off Zoom if you need to leave the meeting and log in when you're ready to join the meeting. If you experience any broadband or internet connectivity problems while participating in the meeting that would be remedied by joining without your video, you must announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera. We will now take roll. Recording secretary, will you please call the roll?
Evan, please.
Here.
Alyssa Brown. Here. Patricia Camarillo. Here. Cassie Quasha. Here. Alia Diazzo.
I think that's me here.
Brian Duker.
Here.
Vanessa Escobar. Here. Isla Estrada Rubelas. Here. Corey Harvey. Colleen Haseman.
Here.
Misha Herrera. Linda Hang. Here. Jason Morgan.
Here.
Joshua Northam.
Here.
Benjamin Odell.
Here.
Andy Redfern.
Here.
Kathleen Wally. Here. Becca Sackett. Here. Tina Sloan. Here. Gina Sullivan. Here. Matt Wallace.
Here.
Beverly Young. Here. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. All right, I would like to remind everyone about the meeting procedures before we get to today's agenda. We have work group members participating from the commission building, but also work members participating via Zoom. The public also has the option to attend the work group meeting at the commission office or participate remotely through Zoom or via telephone. Microphones. This is really important. The meeting room technology includes built-in microphones, speakers, cameras, and monitors. They have been adjusting them this morning. And just so you know, everything at the table, including swiping candy and moving your binders, is being picked up really well and effectively at the back of the room. That also includes any sort of side comments or conversations. So just be mindful that if you need to have a side conversation, we encourage you to do so outside of the room. Work group members attending the meeting via Zoom that would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And because this is a hybrid meeting, we will need to conduct each vote by roll call. We would like to ask the members of the public who attend the meeting via Zoom and would like to make a public comment to check their Zoom identification. Your Zoom ID is the name that you use when you log into the meeting. It's really important that the Zoom ID is accurate so we can call on you appropriately during public comment. So next we'll cover the public comment procedures. One of the co-chairs will announce when the public comment period is open during the presentation of the agenda item. And we ask for anyone who wishes to comment to notify the meeting moderator. Individuals who attend the meeting at the commission office will need to submit a request to address the work group card, which is located on the table by the entrance. The meeting moderator will notify the individual when it's their turn to speak. And at that time, the individual will be able to approach the table and share their comments. Individuals who join the meeting via Zoom will need to click on the raise hand icon to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on an item. And the moderator will notify the individual when it's their turn to speak by calling their Zoom ID. At that time, the individual will be prompted to unmute their microphone and will be able to share their comment. The Zoom ID name used by the member of the public to join the meeting will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Individuals who join the meeting through telephone, you will need to press *9 on your phone to inform the meeting moderator that you would like to speak on a particular item. The moderator will notify the individual it's their turn to speak by calling their phone number, and then will allow them to unmute their telephone. At that time, the individual will be prompted to press *6 and will be able to share their comment. Please note, only a partial phone number will actually be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker to speak on a particular agenda item. We ask you that you keep your remarks brief and focused on the particular item you're speaking to. And my last note, please make sure you are reminded that the meeting is being recorded. After the meeting, the archived audio and video will be available via the Commission's website. All right. Wonderful. It looks like we have an additional member who has joined us on Zoom. And so I'm just going to quickly go back and ask Tori, are there any disclosures of anyone 18 years or older?
No disclosures.
Very much. All right. And with that, let's move to the approval of the January 2025 RDI TPA Workgroup meeting minutes. We will now open for public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments for the meeting minutes?
We have no public comment.
Great. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do I have a motion to approve the January 2025 RDI TPA Workgroup meeting minutes? Thank you, Tina. Is there a second? Thank you, Vanessa. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes, any changes that need to be made? Seeing none, will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Devin Beasley,
Aye.
Aye.
Patricia Camarello. Aye. Steve Felicia.
Aye.
Talia Diaz-Catano,
Aye.
Van Duker,
Aye.
Vanessa Escobar,
Aye.
Angela Estrada Ramirez. Aye. Corey Harvey,
Aye.
Pauline Haseman,
Aye.
Linda Han. Linda Han. Jason Morgan,
Aye.
Joshua Northam,
Aye.
Benjamin Odell,
Aye.
Mandy Radford,
Aye.
Kathleen Rowley. Aye. Rebecca Sackett. Aye. Tina Slow. Aye. Tina Sullivan. Aye. Matt Wallace.
Aye.
Beverly Young. Aye. Motion carries.
Excellent. And now we will move on to item 2A. Welcome to everyone. It's great to see you all here in person. I'm glad that everybody was able to make it here safely today, and I will turn it over to our commission staff for any updates or instructions.
Before you do that, let's welcome officially
Yeah.
Juliet as our newest guest member. We are thrilled to have you. Would you like to start us off today?
Sure, I'll go, just to,
Wonderful.
I was gonna do that.
Sorry.
I'm like,
So welcome, it's great to see you all. I realize that this is the longest period of time that we have not been together in a very long time. And so it's great to see you all. I missed you. It's nice to see your faces and have you all collected here. I just, we're gonna be leading off today by looking at the item that went forward to the commission recently with your great thinking, as well as some interim actions that are based on issues surfaced here. And just to say that people are listening and action is being taken, and the work that you're doing here is already having an impact. And you're doing such a good job that they decided to upgrade your facilitator. And it's true. And so I'm just so thrilled. We don't need to clap again, but I'm just so thrilled to have Juliet join us. To really sort of, have a strong hand in taking your vision, your recommendations forward on what the next generation of performance assessment is going to look like. And so Juliet will be going back and forth, but primarily she's going
so much. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all today as a staff member. It is a little weird to not have my name called at roll call and for the votes, but it's exciting to be engaging in this work. As Adam said, we had a bigger gap since the last time we met with you, but we did have the item that went forward to the commission. I'm excited to share the feedback with you all. As well as the interim actions and some of the actions or some of the work that has been done as a result of the interim actions. So we have a lot to get through in the next 2 days, but excited by that work. Director Sandy, do you have anything you would like to say?
It's great to see you all. Thanks. Meeting 6, 8. It is absolutely great to have you here. You and I used to share a hallway at UC Davis long ago and far away.
Yes.
And I have longed for just such a collaboration as great to double the size of our team. That's really good, and really do appreciate the thoughtful ways in which you all have been engaging in the meeting that we're about to discuss with you. With the commission, I was very fruitful, and you are resonating with the things that you're bringing forward. Asked us to take some actions initially, and all on board. So that's the subject of the next update. I'm moving to day and a half of this meeting and one more 2-day meeting and one more 2-day meeting. So we're in the home stretch, friends. We've got to hit third base and run for home. Thank you.
And then Commissioner Palvery, was there anything that you wanted to share?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing. No, thank you all for all of your excellent work. We had an excellent report at the last commission meeting, and really look forward to your continuing to think through these really challenging problems. We appreciated the thoughtful feedback and recommendations, and we've approved, I think, quite a few interim actions as well. Thank you.
All right. And on that note, we will move along. It is time for us to review our norms. So I'm going to ask you to assist me with that process. Would someone like to read the first norm, please?
Sure. Be present, be on time, and participate. Take care of self as needed. We will take regular breaks. Emphasis on regular break. Please refrain from checking email and doing other tasks.
Thank you. Someone like to read the next one?
Give and receive warm and cool feedback respect. We critique work and not people. Critical analysis is part of the continuous improvement.
Thank you. The next bullet.
Speak your truth and seek understanding of truths that differ from yours. Embrace different perspectives. Assume positive intent. Take responsibility for impact.
Next.
This power dynamics. Power shows up in many different ways. Be aware of how you might unconsciously be unconsciously using your privilege and power.
Thank you. And finally,
step up, step back. Be mindful of taking too much or too little space.
is there any additional thoughts that you'd like us to add here? Is there anything that's missing as we near the end of our work together that might be helpful? Do you feel like they're good as they are? If you feel like they're good as they are, show me a thumbs up. All right. Thank you. On that note, we will our introduction about the general session. So just a reminder of our charge. This is the language of our charge here. The commission staff directs us to convene an expert panel, which we are that panel here today, to evaluate the design and implementation of the state's current teaching performance assessment. The objective is to ensure that these assessments are, you could probably recite this in your sleep now, valid, authentic, formative in nature, embedded in preparation, and contribute to the program improvement through the accreditation system. Again, this is a reminder of Focus Area 1. Focus Area 1 is an analysis of any modifications needed to current assessments to ensure they're valid and authentic to the work of teaching, feasible to implement in the wide range of classroom settings across the state, and appropriate for beginning teachers. Focus Area 2 is the recommendations for how programs might embed assessments into coursework as well as clinical work to avoid duplicative work for candidates. Focus Area 3 is recommendations to strengthen the accreditation system to ensure programs embed the assessments in coursework and clinical work, offer sufficient clinical and pedagogical support, and support candidates to pass the assessment. Recommendation Area 4 is recommendations for how programs can engage in local scoring of the assessment to inform program improvement. And 5 is suggested questions for program completer surveys to understand candidate experience of programmatic support assessment completion. So with that, this is just a short timeline to remind us of where we are at this moment in time in relationship to our work. So as you can see, we are on February the 26th and the 27th. There is a work meeting that will be scheduled or has been scheduled for March the 20th via Zoom. And then we will reconvene in person on April the 10th and the 11th. I'm sorry, there's a CTC meeting on April the 10th and the 11th, and we will reconvene on April the 23rd and the 24th to send our final recommendations to the commission. So with that, any questions about the timeline? Pretty explicit.
So I'm just going to add that we are supposed to have those draft recommendations for all the focus areas ready for the commission to review by the April 10th and 11th. So we have our work cut out for us between our 2 days together today and then the 1 day in March. And just one more note. So at that April 10th and 11th meeting, we'll present the agenda item with the draft recommendations. We'll get additional feedback from the commission, and then we will use that in that April 23rd, 24th meeting to do the final revisions. So we have the final recommendations ready for the June 26th.
Excellent.
Sorry, your we is killing me because you're we there and you're we here. When you
not
say,
we there anymore.
Okay. So when you say we are presenting, that means you are presenting to the CTC?
Yeah. We as in the co-chairs.
Okay. The four of you, we, okay.
I think on behalf of the work group.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Any other points of clarification or questions about the timeline? So with that, today we're going to focus on our recommendation development goal, which is, of course, our overall goal for meeting 6. We're going to, we've already, well, help me out here. We've already drafted our Focus Area 1 recommendations as well as our Focus Area 2 for embedding, and those were taken to the commission meeting most recently and we sent it to you all. So you'll have an opportunity to look at that. And I know that you've already had an opportunity to look at that in your homework as well. Today, we're going to focus on our initial recommendations for Focus Area 3. And then tomorrow, we're going to focus on Area 4. So, again, those initial recommendations were they weren't even really a draft. They were just initial recommendations. So those are still able to be adjusted if we feel that that's necessary. But again, the bulk of our time today will be focused on area 3, actually tomorrow on area 3, and then we will also focus on area 4. Area 3 is accreditation. Area 4 is local scoring.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So just one thing that could be a potential point of confusion is that you will see recommendations that you may recognize from your discussions in focus area 1 that ended up in 3, 2, so there has been some movement based on just very clear categorization. I think the best example of it is there were a lot of recommendations in focus area 1 and 2 related specifically to local scoring that just got put in local scoring. So nothing has been deleted, but you will see we have kind of like a full set -5 right now. So you may wonder, wait, when did we do this for focus area 4? And the answer is, well, you did it in focus area 1 and it just belonged in 4. So.
And we have those marked as we go through.
Excellent. And thank you for that, Adam, because I know that when we started off, we were a little overzealous in the beginning. And so it's nice that you were able to help us categorize those. So with that, we will move along to item 3A.
Okay, so 3A is to review the commission feedback and the interim actions. So you all have a copy of agenda item 4A, which was presented to the commission at the February meeting, looking on the date. Hopefully you had a chance to review that. That was presenting to the commission the work up to that point. And so that is when, as Adam said, some of the recommendations for focus areas 1 and 2 were moved to fit into because they saw them better aligned with focus areas 3, 4, or 5. In addition, based on those recommendations, forward some proposed interim actions. And the commission did choose to adopt those interim actions. And we'll be able to go through those with you in just a minute and give you an update on progress. But first, I wanted to just share commission feedback. You all, I believe, received a document. It's printed in your binders. And so basically what this feedback is, it's the notes that we took as the commissioners were sharing their responses to the agenda item. And so first off, I just want to say that overwhelmingly the commissioners expressed support for the work of the work group. Lots of comments about the thoughtful efforts. But then just as they talked, took notes, and then took those notes and categorized them. And so you have all of those broken down in your handout. Then what? There was quite a bit of overlap. So a little bit. Scroll to the next slide. So I just pulled out some sample responses within each category. The areas of feedback, the first area was with regards to program accountability. And so just some sample responses. Programs should be expected to use the TPA data to inform continuous improvement efforts, just as candidates use the data from their students to inform their instruction. Again, these were the comments expressed by commissioners. What will accountability look like in practice? There were 5 comments related to local scoring. Again, that was a lot. What will the local scoring look like in practice? The next point category, embedded in programs / feedback. Comments, feedback needs to be timely and actionable for candidates. What does it mean for the TPA to be fully embedded? Some of the questions that we have wrestled with in the work. Lots of comments, or 5 that were captured, regarding program resources and capacity. There were concerns about resources to support the work and the faculty workload. especially with the conversations about local scoring, especially about the conversations about additional feedback. And then there was a question, will the additional tasks put on faculty members undercut the intentions? Next, area of culturally sustaining pedagogy / asset-based approaches. There was a concern that the diversity in the theoretical frameworks that undergird programs' attention to culturally sustaining pedagogy and equity will lead to these just becoming more buzzwords. Or we really did. And then a need to prioritize what candidates can do as we ask them to do with their students. So the idea that when TPAs are being assessed, we're using an asset-based perspective. Comments about the validity, authenticity. Question was, how well are the TPAs aligned with what teachers are asked to do on a daily basis? And questions that we have grappled with in this space as well. And then with regards to surveys, concerns about candidate fatigue with surveys, often after a lot of surveys. And then the way to potentially combat that, we need to be able to demonstrate that we're using the candidate responses to take action.
I thought it was interesting. They were very supportive of the work that we're doing, but echoed all of the same concerns that we have continuously grappled with. So it was interesting to see that alignment. And then definitely kind of feeling a little overwhelmed about taking this feedback and then embedding it and making our recommendations stronger, which I know is our next charge, but just kind of having that as a framework and mindset going forward feels really important right now.
I missed that there was one more slide. My apologies. Two other areas, transparency of data and the creation of the continuum that we've discussed.
Sorry, this is a lot in.
Yeah, sorry.
Are we gonna get like some formal write-up of all the brainstorming that's happening here? Are we supposed to just digest these quotes that you've taken and then figure out what to do?
It was more just a presentation of the quotes, but
we're getting like some formal.
We don't get a formal feedback. I mean, the best suggestion we can provide is to go back and watch the video.
The video of the discussion was shared in one of the homework assignments. That shows the entire discussion from the commission, and that was shared as part of the homework. It's a good. I mean, I think it's worth watching. It's a good watch. The word Mandy said, the word that I was thinking the whole time. There's a lot of alignment between this body and that body. That'll be your if you're looking for the word as they were said, that would be your source.
Just one more thing about that. I think it's very important. Is that all right? Am I jumping in front of somebody? It's important to know that the commissioners were not providing direction to RDI TPA. This was them engaging in the discussion with the co-chairs and with all of you in absentia. And I think what you see here, you see when you look at the video, I think is pretty strong resonance and possibly some other thoughts that, from their seat at this table, many of them have been here for many years working on these policies. And so they may have some insights that help clarify and help you think about how you might want to adjust a recommendation or not. But I wanted to just underscore that it was not directly, that's not their role. Their role is as a receiver. And this opportunity to have these check-ins with two bodies is just useful in terms of seeing where there's resonance, seeing where there's alignment, seeing where there may be questions that you pose to them or that they pose to you that help shape and sharpen what you're doing. Non-directive was the term I wanted to throw out to you. That was on anybody's mind.
And then
refreshed my memory about the meeting and listened to it on the way up here. And so I was struck by one of the comments at the end of the meeting. I think Commissioner Litt made it, and he was saying that what would be helpful to them was that if our recommendations were focused, streamlined, and directly actionable. In other words, I think them, like us, are right now mired in all of the things that we've done. Both sides should be to get them focused and streamlined and directly.
Thank you for reminding us of that. Yeah, that was a great recommendation.
Any other thoughts?
All right, so with that, we did take, go ahead, Vanessa.
I had a question about just going back to the homework for Ed Code 443202 that was recently implemented 1.1. Was that supported by some of the work that we've done here? And how does that affect our charge today?
I think what I can say about the bill is that it was enacted by the legislature during the 2024 year. It called for the creation of this group and also made some amendments to 4.3202 that are within your scope, but it's not new, and it was all of last year's work. It just didn't take effect till January 1, but it was signed by the governor in the fall, and the legislature was done with it largely at the point we made a strategic hire to come in and help us organize a group who could quickly help us get our arms around the areas of focus and bring recommendations according to the timeline that bill established. So it's not new. Well, I mean, it's new, but it's not new since you've been doing.
So just to add, so all of the handouts that we've used since day one has referenced the language as you see it that became effective January 1. So it's been sort of infused into everything that we've done from the beginning.
Thank you for the clarification.
So at the February CTC meeting, there were 7 interim actions that were adopted. And so we are asking staff to review those and then give us an update today in so much as what we have.
Yeah, perfect. So these are available for you in handout from the agenda item 4A, page 14. Interim actions that were proposed. They said they all were approved by the commission. And since that time, that was 3 weeks ago tomorrow, CTC staff have been working on the implementation of those action items. So there's a lot of information I know that we're throwing out at you this afternoon, right after lunch. But interim action 1 was to update the TPAs as necessary to eliminate the use of content-based condition codes. So had lots of conversations about this. The Cal TPA, the performance assessment team, did some very quick work to analyze the condition codes and then develop some revised condition codes for the technical issues, shifting the focus of assessors to score what is submitted. So that asset-based approach. Conversations about the content-based condition codes will likely require some changes to the rubrics. For the Ed TPA, condition codes were reviewed. Few, if any, relate to issues of content. We may need to do a little bit further review, but for the most part, those are just technical condition codes. And then for FAST, condition codes are not utilized. Go ahead and keep moving on. Interim action 2, also related to condition codes. This was to redirect candidate submissions with technical condition codes back to the candidates so they can resolve identified technical issues and resubmit at no additional cost. So again, we've had lots of conversations with evaluation systems to address the technical condition codes for both Ed TPA and Cal TPA. For Cal TPA, the most commonly used condition code is A2, which relates to uploading the submission to the incorrect content area. And so at this point, any candidate receives that A2 condition code now receives a voucher so that they can then resubmit and not have to pay the fee. Yes. So one challenge that we're working through is that both Cal TPA and Ed TPA, there's currently no mechanism in place to easily notify a candidate once a submission has been marked to receive a condition code. So just right now there's a gap in the timeline from when it first gets noticed to when the candidate actually gets notified and when they're able to resubmit.
Can you give us a ballpark of what that timeline is? Is it months? Is it?
It can be, depends on when they actually submit. Because if they submit in the submission window, then it gets sent to the assessors, and the actual assessor cannot make the determination of if it's going to receive a condition code. They recognize that, okay, there's perhaps an issue with this. It gets kicked up to the lead assessor, who then says, yes, does warrant a condition code. So then that submission gets marked. The score reports are not released or that doesn't get released till all the score reports are released. So whenever that time is, and then they're unable to submit again till the next submission. So that's Nadia.
Nadia has.
Talia.
Hi, yeah, I had a quick question about the response from the providers. Are they going to do any targeted intervention of any sorts besides just the voucher for candidates that they're seeing are constantly, or they're seeing certain condition codes that are coming up that are the ones that are more commonly used, like I don't know, like a video or any kind of other information that they're going to give candidates or make it known that there seems to be a glitch with this particular condition code?
What I can say is I'm making eye contact with Marissa Luna Lopez over here, who's with our performance assessment team. And I mean, we are literally weeks away, 3 weeks from the commission meeting, have put together a whole spreadsheet of all the condition codes, and Marissa and the PA team working with our OP team. And all of us have been looking at what can we do? How do we do it? What's the time frame for doing it? And of course, most important is how do we get communication about it out to the people that need to have it? So it's not done yet. It is in process and practice, but I'm vamping for you, Marissa, and you're going to jump as soon as I stop, right? We are doing we have regular office hours with candidates. We have regular meetings with our coordinators and various other in the Cal TPA system. And I know that the Ed TPA, I don't know what the Ed TPA system does that parallels that, but getting the information out to the people who need it is a high priority right now. But having fully processed all the things that need to happen with our contractor evaluation systems is also part of this process. So it's in progress, and I have time for you to.
No, for sure. And anytime that a condition code is issued to a candidate or a submission is deemed a condition code, it does come up to lead assessors. And then, especially like I know, speaking of Cal APA, it's a whole different thing, but with what we do as the model sponsors, we look at it too. We have to agree with the lead assessor and then issue a condition code. Now, if we see someone struggling, they have multiple things going on, we don't contact the candidate themselves. We contact their program and talk with their program about how to support the candidate. Because truly, that's the responsibility of the program to work with the candidate to move them forward. We've had really great relationships with our programs and conversations with folks. But like you said, we do have office hours where candidates can come 15 to 5 o'clock every Wednesday for anyone that's interested in coming on Zoom, and they can ask any questions that they have. We also have all of our inboxes. They are manned by people like myself answering. I should have. I'm not doing the norms here, right? That's our email. But I had someone that asked me about how to get an administrative credential in California, so we can send them the information. We do have candidates send us emails regularly with specific questions. So anytime we see someone particularly flagged, we do address it with them if they bring it to us in office hours. But if we see someone struggling from a program, or we see multiple people from a program that are struggling with one content, we definitely make contact with that program coordinator and have that conversation.
Can I just follow up real quick? I'm sorry, I know Ben, you have your hand up, if that's okay. So just to kind of leave it out there, and I don't necessarily need a response, but one of the concerns that I know I brought up a while ago was that like a lot of the candidates, the teacher candidates, are no longer in their programs. And so they're in this sort of purgatory space where they're not in their programs. They didn't pass the TPAs. And so they're getting these condition codes that are just a one sentence response saying you didn't pass for this. So I'm glad that there's some movement going on, but I would still like to put it out there that you're still putting the onus on like the candidate, right? Like they still have to be sort of proactive about seeking out the information, where that to me is still one of those areas that we're not addressing. We have a whole group of folks who are not in the program anymore. They graduated their program. They're probably teaching or doing something else, and they're trying to get through the TPAs, and they might be getting these condition codes, and now they get a voucher, which is great. So they might resubmit the same thing that they just resubmitted without really understanding what's going on. And what I would like is for the providers, Pearson and other folks, to put something out where they are addressing these condition codes that are coming up. They are addressing some of the discrepancies that they're seeing in their submissions to say, look, this is an area where we can do a targeted video, or we can do some targeted outreach to say, this is maybe how you submit it. It might be something like formatting, or it might be something else. And so just putting that out there, and we can circle back to that later, but I'm just, put that out there.
We never like to plug something that I'm actually in, but we do have some videos that we made in the performance assessment before I came to the commission. We did address some of the high level concerns coming forward, like culturally responsive teaching, how some of these pieces look. They are on the PA on the website attached to the CTC's website, but we are working on a lot of that information. So any suggestions for good video going forward would be so that way you can address that.
I think especially as it pertains to condition code A2, which is a very prevalent code, anything that could support candidates in remedying that would be greatly appreciated.
So I was just going to add a little bit off what Talia was talking about. I got to watch the commission meeting. It was interesting. Like you guys said, I saw a lot of alignment between some of the things we were talking about and some of what they did. One of the things, though, that occurred to me, so I love these first steps that we're seeing, these interim actions. I just want to verify, like, these are first steps. And what I mean by that is like a condition code of A2. If I look at single subject credentials, and let's say they misselect a single subject content area, while I actually might need to fact check myself. If they select a single subject content area, can they misselect which content area they're taking the single subject TPA in? Or is it just single subject, just multi-subject, and just ed specialist? When they register for the test. Does my question make sense?
Your question absolutely makes sense. And yes, it is a very long drop-down menu for Cal TPA when you say, I'm a single subject teacher, and you got to scroll down and find your area. And so, yes, that is part of the challenge. And person who came to office hours, who had gotten that condition code more than once, did not understand that she had to select the credential area that she was seeking. Just pick the top one and kept submitting over and over again to the top one. And once we talked to her and answer her question, she had an excellent submission and it was all good. But yeah.
And I think that's kind of what my point is because in the single subject area, all the TPA rubrics are the same, regardless of the single subject content. So why are they having to resubmit just because they chose the wrong content area if truly the rubric has not shifted for the content area they're going for? And why is there, I mean, recognizing the system can't be changed like this in a night. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. But like, would it not be possible on the back end for us to reselect, oh, they meant this one? If we're catching it, it means we're aware that they meant to submit in a different one. And that could be done by program. And I'm saying that as a program on a local level. Like if I had the ability, like notification to make a shift on my side, for instance. But I'm just thinking it's interesting because I know there's not much different. All single subject have the same rubric, at least on Cal TPA. Multiple and single subject have very similar, extremely similar tasks and rubrics. So if they misselect something, part of me wonders, like, if it's possible that there is an outreach similar to what Talia said, because even just doing the work to re-upload and re-annotate the videos, and like that's hours of work. So it's just something that I love this first step. I'm just hopeful that this is just the first step when it comes to this condition code. That's all.
We appreciate that. Thank you. We agree. We're right at the beginning of unpacking all of it, coming up with our path.
Jason.
Along those same lines, I like the first step, but I also want to know, like, is it possible to make it timely, right? It says no mechanism currently in place to easily notify the candidate. The candidate picked the incorrect credential that they were first subject. I don't think that needs to go up this whole ladder. Even if you're contacting the programs, that's okay. But it's just, oh, you need to select math. Okay, thank you. Then I select math and then be able to submit within that same cycle. That's more formative. The approach of like it going up the ladder and you getting it weeks and months later, that's what makes it summative. So if we're trying to have a summative nature, there needs to be some mechanism where it is timely feedback to correct this, especially something as small as that. Now, if it's bigger things, obviously we need something else, but if it's going to be formative, is it possible for that first step to lead to mechanisms that can quickly notify the candidate for those kind of minor errors or codes? Like, can it get there? Or is there some major barrier to prevent that?
Well, I think it can get there. I'm an optimist about that.
Bev?
I want to go back a second for a process question. The 7 interim actions, the commission approved all of those? Yes. So those were staff input. Staff wrote those interim actions. So I guess this is about the process and maybe attribution. Are these all based on things that this group, it says that this group talked about, but are they all recommendations that we had already approved? Because I never understood, and I have no problem with the outcomes of them, but the process is a little iffy to me. That in our timeline, I never saw that as we were still in the process of developing our recommendations, some of them would be taken forward by staff, not as our product, and be approved before we sort of knew that was happening. Because I didn't know this was happening. And I don't have a problem with any of these 7. But I just want to keep the process clear that if we're making recommendations, they're our recommendations from us and they're attributed to this group and not staff sort of, stealing our thunder and like stuff is done before we even have our final report. These are things we've talked about doing. And I think we should know ahead of time if the commission is going to take action on some of our recommendations when we haven't formally recommended them yet.
And Beverly, I agree with you 100% because at the previous meeting, the interim recommendations were made and I happened to be in the audience. And when they called me up, they asked, how would the group feel about this? And I said, I would recommend that they wait because I didn't feel that it was they weren't asking me the question, they were asking us the question. And since we hadn't discussed it yet, I didn't feel comfortable giving them,
I can understand the need to sort of move this forward piecemeal and make progress as we can. But I think this group should know about that before the commission takes action on what we've discussed. And we should all agree that that should go forward that way.
So jumping in.
I mean, too long, Mary, of procedural stuff with the commission. Sorry.
Just jumping in, so staff came to us as co-chairs. And these interim actions came from us collectively as a group, out of the conversations that we had had over the last several months. Things that we were asking questions of what can we fix right away that get to the goals that are coming out of the group.
But I appreciate, I don't have a problem
Oh, I
with
do too.
any of the
I felt
actions
the
here.
exact
I
same
just,
way.
it's the process that I'm questioning.
Felt the exact same way. And so I said, I would recommend that you pause, let us do our work, and then we'll come back in February. And so I was under the impression that we were going to share them here, but I don't think that happened. So I think it's a good point about the process.
The other thing I'd like to raise is back to these timelines. There are things like content-based condition codes that need to be addressed now. And so while it's not a matter of stealing thunder, it's as staff, we have seen in our workings of the things, and we're kind of thinking about what are some actions that we can take now. Your recommendations will supersede anything that has been deployed. But our priority in this was there are some very simple things, very clear things that we want to move forward so that candidates in the near term can have relief.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the timing. I think an email to the group in advance of the commission meeting, letting us know that those staff actions were being put forward would have been appropriate.
I thought we discussed this at the last meeting, at the last RDI TPA meeting.
I think we intended to, but we ran out of time.
Next on the list is Tina.
This actually had to do with the content codes and the comment about the rubrics being the same across content areas. And I just wanted to ensure I'm understanding correctly, because I believe one of the issues with the content codes or somebody identifying the wrong content area has to do with the scorer who's scoring their TPA. So it's not just that the rubrics are all the same regardless of your content area. It is that the scorers are required to have expertise in your content area, just to make sure that anybody listening doesn't see that this is an oversimplification.
Absolutely, yeah, the requirements to score a single subject, the assessment looks the same, whether you're teaching art or PE, you need an art teacher to evaluate an assessment for an art teacher or a PE teacher to look at the submission. So yes, the rubrics are the same, but they go to very different groups, very different places, very different sets of expertise. So thank you for that.
Right, because the tasks are similar, the structures of the tasks, but the pedagogy around here differs.
Vanessa.
I just wanted to echo what Beverly was saying and continue off of what Jason was saying. This particular action item, Beverly and I and our group had some really great recommendations that seem like now have been muffled down by this particular one. And that makes me feel a little bit in the same boat as Beverly, in that we had a vast conversation about our 2-week window and like condition codes and how like we thought that through. And this seems like our idea was taken and kind of partially put in there, and it feels a little unfair. And I just wanted to point that out. I agree.
Colin.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the process at all. I think that the staff based it on the conversations that we had. And I think that the priority, I understood that, I thought we did speak about it a little in the last meeting. And I thought that the priority that we wanted was to make sure that current students that we are working with in our programs will be able to get some benefit from some of the work that we've been doing. And that's why it was rushed through. And I think I don't really have a problem with, it's a bit like, I don't know, some drug that would cure something and the FDA spending 3 years deciding whether or not people can use it. And I think people want to use it. I think people want some of this stuff immediately available.
Well, and our final recommendations if adopted by the CTC, if they were in contrast with any of these.
Yeah, and I
right?
think that all of the other things that were there as well, these were just the immediate things that could happen immediately. I don't think anything, I would hope that nothing else we've been talking about will be watered down in any way, shape or form. I would hope not. If it is, then I'll be standing up and saying it's been watered down. But I don't think so. These were things that came out that could be done tomorrow, in my opinion.
This was low-hanging fruit to put in action as soon as possible to help candidates currently in programs trying to earn their credential. If there's something that, Vanessa, in your case, that is aligned, but goes beyond in terms of how detailed and thoughtful it is, that will supersede. There's also kind of transitions with versions happening right now with the TPA. And so I would expect we're going to report out on how we're doing with this at each commission meeting. That's Interim Action 7. And we're going to keep chipping away at it until sort of what we have heard in the near term is implemented to the extent practicable. That does not shortchange, that does not circumvent, that does not stymie your process. That's going to move forward as intended. But, just to touch back, that process is long, right? Like we have the drafts in April, then we have the finals in June, and then we develop work plans. And then the work, so I mean, if you start kind of building that out, we're getting into late 25 and into 26, and then we're implementing things that have their own timelines. And we've got candidates that are getting condition coded for not properly citing an ELD standard. And yeah, so just wanted to share that it is not our intention to jump the gun. It's to
communication and process. That's all for me.
But thank you.
Ready to go on?
Anything else? So yes.
Interim Action 3. So, yes. And I feel like it actually connects with some of the conversation for Interim Action 2, is to issue updated guidelines for acceptable support, clarifying that direct ongoing feedback from faculty, supervisors, and mentor teachers aimed at improving candidate responses and addressing technical issues leading to condition codes are important, essential, and encouraged forms of support. So for this one, currently in the process of drafting a program sponsor alert that will go out through PSD News, through all the usual avenues, to provide just some updated language on to provide clear, explicit language of what acceptable support looks like, with some scenarios of this is what you can do, this is what you might consider doing. And then we want to follow that up with webinars for support providers, info sessions at support provider gatherings, places where you have program faculty gathered, videos for candidates that say, this is the kind of support you can expect to receive from your programs. This is what acceptable support looks like. And then reviews or further reviews of the Cal TPA, Ed TPA, and FAST acceptable support documents with possible revisions to those as well, just to make sure that language is very clear.
Brent.
So this is an interesting space where we may have gotten ahead of ourselves again because we're moving quickly, but I think we should move quickly to support people who are being condition coded. Having said that, what's our position as a group on machine support, machine feedback? I noticed the humans up there, but I don't see the machines. And the machines, as far as I can tell from some very quiet conversations that have been revealed to me, are in fact participating in constructing responses to this TPA. So I could have raised that in the context of our work group in the room and then made a recommendation, gone through a process, which I hope to do at some point before the end of this whole process. But right now, I don't see a space in this interim action to address that interim challenge.
So
to clarify what I mean by that, or do we get the point?
I think what you're saying is using ChatGPT or something like that to go in and review where I would upload my response, I would upload a sample rubric and tell ChatGPT to score it using the rubric.
That's a great example. Thank you. And that's one that I've actually heard quietly mentioned by people who recently come to the system. And I also know that the CSU has adopted a major initiative with respect to ChatGPT that attempts to have OpenAI infuse itself in every part of the curriculum. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity to start thinking about teacher education as well as these kinds of performance exams. So yeah, I just wondering, we'll get to that. And I think our process can allow us to raise those questions and bring recommendations, but we're not there yet. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, I would say that the, 44320.2 or 0.4 outlines those focus areas, and AI has implications for all of those focus areas. I'm sure you could find many. In fact, in the activity that's coming up in the next item, Juliet designed it such that one of the possibilities for experiencing the performance assessment is to drop a prompt in ChatGPT and give it some guidance about who it is and have it generate as a sort of a way to kind of stimulate some of that thinking, because in the next generation of these assessments, it's going to have to be AI informed. It's going to have to be designed to the reality of the situation that candidates are in. So I think that is wholly appropriate and encouraged. And, if there's that recommendation form is always open, people, right? Like you can, so if there are recommendations where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go back. I have some thoughts about each of the focus areas. I want to go back and address this issue across all of them. You are more than welcome to and encouraged to, I would say.
Did you have a comment about the AI? Mine's different.
I think about the AI. Yeah, I need to clarify on kind of a question, I suppose, based on what Brett brought up, because I think it's a very valuable conversation. And I don't know what insights you can offer us as to, will we be crafting any language? There's really two sides for candidates, so an acceptable use, but also scoring in the pathway as we look towards the future for acceptable use for scoring. So I don't know if both aspects of the language is right now being published, developed. I don't know if that's necessarily within our purview to make those policies, but
I would say that, if I may, I would say that, this is where we get back to recommendation grain size, right? So what is guidance and a recommendation about the development of such policies that's going to be relevant to the person that picks it up in multiple months and says, okay, I need this, this is how I'm going to go about developing this, because if it's explicit language, that's a little bit too fine of a grain size. But if it's consult X, Y, and Z in the development, and ensure that I think that would be something that would have a little bit more longevity. That's
Really bringing up a lot of suddenly things that I think are absolutely going to work, because I think about the kind of, my question originally was about changing the guidelines for acceptable support, and what specifically those guidelines are going to be and who's going to look at it before it goes out to the public. It seems like commission staff are not going to be, not commissioners are not going to be looking at this prior to it going out. Is that correct?
Right. And so just to clarify, we're not looking to change the policy around acceptable support. It's more changing the language to be more like, this is what the standard says. This is what that can look like. Does that make sense? So program standard 5 has very specific guidelines on what constitutes acceptable support. But there seems to be confusion around what it means. Okay. So then providing different scenarios of what each of those elements. Does that make sense?
Yes, as long as everybody knows what the confusion is and it's agreed upon. Because it also, absolutely makes me think about the kinds of recommendations that are going to come out of our group. We have to be concerned with the future of education and the way where things are going, and the kinds of assessment tasks that are meaningful for ensuring that individuals, teachers can demonstrate in a classroom.
Joshua.
Just going off of what Tina said, there's a fine line between what is acceptable support and what is having a computer create your submissions for you. Just as we are as classroom teachers, wherever we're at the university level or in a school classroom, there's a fine line for me having my students, even in high school, can consult AI programs to help. But there's also a very fine line of when it's help and when it's a computer creating an assignment for them, or if it's one of our teachers creating a lesson plan, having AI create a lesson plan or a whole 10-month calendar or whatever it is, right? So I think there's a very, very fine line between what, I think this is what I think you're saying is between those two things. What is acceptable support and what is, we're opening up a floodgate for people to use AI to submit things. And they're not even learning how to teach at that point or demonstrating that they know how to.
So just to clarify, we are putting out no guidance whatsoever on the uses of ChatGPT to generate, revise. That is not the current policy, or is it correct me if I'm wrong, is you're going to default to your programs policy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are, I would say that, developing the recommendations gives us the time to think about what a policy for the future, next generation of assessment makes sense. Looking like for this is as the executive director Sandy likes to say, it's the belt and suspenders approach, right? So the belt is for the condition codes and making sure that, if there are condition codes that don't make sense, that we can get rid of them. And if there are condition codes that are going to need to stick around in the interim, that programs know that they can support with direct, hey, you're going to want to avoid this. Make sure you check this. Here's a checklist. Are all these things done? Make sure that this is, when you get to the drop-down menu, it's going to be really long, right? Like go to so that it's just we're building kind of a multiple supports from different angles so that specifically the user here is the candidate, so that the candidate doesn't wind up in a cycle where they're being delayed from progressing towards their credential.
Adam, I had just a follow-up question with what you said earlier about getting into the grain level size when Kathleen was in the question. So what would be the difference then from just a scorer using a top drop-down menu to give feedback versus AI giving general feedback if you're not going to get down to the grain size?
For grain size, I'm saying policy. What are the recommendations of the body? And my only point is, and it is up to the body to do as the body will. You could provide very specific, the body recommends that this be the specific policy that is adopted by any future use. And, that could do that. You could send that to the commission. My recommendation about grain size was more when you're thinking about, since we're not going to be there as a group to shape it in the future, what might be some guidelines or considerations that you would want those folks to be able to have with them when they're deciding, as opposed to writing. Yeah.
Colin?
I'd like to follow up on what Tina said. It's really important that we get the balance right of the actual wording that it's going to be giving people that are supporting candidates. For example, I firmly believe that at the moment we're not supporting them because we feel that we can't to a certain extent. There's certain things that we can suggest to our candidates and other things that we're not supposed to. So it becomes, in my view, let's say choosing a piece of video that they're going to submit. Are we really testing their ability to choose good video if we leave it up to them? Or are we, as faculty and staff supporting them, able to say, why didn't you choose this 10 minutes? What made you choose that 10 minutes and not this one? Isn't this one stronger than that one for what you want to show? Or are we really going to stay where we are now, which is leaving it up to them to choose and us going, maybe you should rethink that and leaving it there. Now, if we were an English teacher writing that on a student's work as feedback, that is not acceptable, right? And so I just want to move what they're submitting away from it, how well they write, how well they choose things as beginning teachers, to actually us guiding them and saying, this is showing you at your best. This is what you've done here, this piece, that piece, this shows you at your best. It's not how good you are at responding to the prompts. It's how good you are as a teacher.
A quick comment to what you're saying. All of this conversation, and I know we've talked about this to some extent, but I think it really solidifies our need to have a theory of action that's guiding all of our beliefs and work. And I'm reminded of many years ago, the privilege of sitting in a room with Lee Shulman. And some of you don't know who he is. He's one of the first people who really understood, I think, performance assessment. He was instrumental in the national boards and all of these things that have been developed in teaching that have been critical. And one of the questions he asked in the room when we were trying to determine what should these performance assessments be? What should they look like? How should we score them? And his opinion was, why can't they be like a dissertation or a report where the purpose is that your committee members, your faculty, your everyone is constantly giving you feedback on the specific things that you're putting in the document because it's making you better. It's going to make you a better researcher. It's going to make you a better writer. The kinds of things that you write a dissertation, you are aiming to be. So one of our big things that we are supposed to be doing, our charge, is to help make the performance assessment more formative. That's been one of the sticky issues for us. Is our theory of action the purpose, or one of the big purposes around this work, is also to help whoever is engaging in it get better? If that is, then what is it supposed to look like?
Thanks.
Interim action 4. All right.
Thank you. Okay. So interim action 4 is to standardize the commission's system for collecting and reporting TPA outcome data and to establish clear metrics to inform policy decisions and preparation programs. So we do have CTC staff currently developing standards for a unified system of reporting TPA pass rates, important metrics that better center the candidate experience. The goal is that the reporting standards will empower accreditation teams to ensure programs are sufficiently preparing and supporting candidates for the TPA. And there will be more updates about that work at the April commission.
We have Kristen Calderon. Could you raise your hand in the back? Kristen is our Harvard Strategic Data Fellow, who is leading this work internally with other members of our data team. And the idea is to pull the reporting in-house and to make sure that we are developing standards for how we are sharing the data that remain consistent from annual report to annual report to annual report.
Kristen is leading this.
Number 5. Oh, I'm sorry.
So one of the issues that comes up whenever you use the word standardize is what you mean by that. And certainly an issue that comes up for me in our work. And we continue to think more and more about TPA model providers is a future in which it turns out that more than 1 or 2 TPAs are the only game in California. I think it's been made abundantly clear to me over the last 4 months that actually any institution can create a TPA. And in fact, some may be planning to do that for all we know now. But let's imagine a scenario, which I think is real, in which people can actually say, hey, Fresno State's onto something. And I want to create my own equivalent. Let's say we do 10 of those CSU system. How does that reality comport with the idea of standardizing a system for collecting and reporting TPA outcome data? Is it just aggregating all those different numbers and reporting them consistently? Or is it going to feed those into a comparability study that would say something to the effect of, we have a benchmark across the state and we kind of know that all of these TPAs roughly do the same thing in terms of measuring outcomes. I think it's a question that's relevant for me because maybe a degree of freedom would be available to all of these institutions if they wanted to create their own metrics, as long as they could be supported by the commission. So where are we, Commissioner and others, with this charge for standardizing the system? Does it mean allowing 1,000 flowers to bloom and just simply collecting the data and all the different lilies and daisies? And
I'm happy to jump in a little on this, and well, others may have some perspective, but I think that I think what this is speaking to is standardizing the data collection and reporting so that we know for every bit of data we get from an institution or a pathway within an institution, what goes into the numerator, what goes into the denominator is exactly meeting the exact same definition. So we can still compare apples and oranges. I do not think we're talking about standardizing this assessment. I know we are not. Those of us that are doing that are not. I don't know what the rest of you all are thinking, but the authors of 44320.2 weren't thinking about standardizing that assessment either. The 1997 law got written, 1998 took effect. Just 25 years in the policy arena, with the notion the state will have a model, and any program that doesn't want to build their own can use the state's model and go through all our trainings and do all of that. We have the Cal TPA as the state model. That PACT as an alternative that many campuses came up with, and it morphed into Ed TPA and went national for a time, which isn't a state model per se, but it's a program determination whether they want to participate in that or state model, or be Cal State Fresno and build their own. So the law still contemplates that and supports the idea, but it asks us to do a very hard thing that, you know, everybody at this table may have a different view on the value proposition here. But what it contemplates is that we have this diversity of innovation within the state available. Those who are ready, able, and can pull their faculty together to innovate in this space. And not every campus has faculty that want to innovate in this space, because that's another factor as well. We aren't mandating that, but if it's there and you want to do it, the law allows it. And we have standards you have to meet for validity and reliability and fairness and all those things. So candidates are treated fairly. We also have law that requires that we collect data and that we identify. Now 1263 added a provision that says that the data we collect needs to help us understand at the state level programs may be struggling because their candidates aren't doing well on whatever instrument they're doing. We have to have some common parlance underneath that is not apples, oranges, and rutabagas, right? It needs to kind of be a constant that we're collecting data around with a diversity of implementation. I can't imagine. Psychometricians have hated this for decades, right? But I think educators may love this because they understand, or could love this in concept. And don't commit any y'all love to this, but concept is do what's right in your practice and hit these metrics, which are TPEs, which are, you know, and you have to meet them. Design standards that create fairness, validity, and reliability and can produce data that can still be understood as comparable on some level. Hard task, but that is available to the whole state and has been since 1998.
Super appreciate your letting us know that again and reminding us. And I think it really says this work we talked about envisioning things within the mouse trap and outside of it. We have a lot of degrees of freedom here to rethink what we're calling TPA. We're not just simply, I believe, validating the three that exist. We're actually asking the question, what would it mean to think about any TPA? And if people want to start one because they believe that's the right thing to do, that's a whole nother question, but you're giving us the time to.
Can I just add one more thing? It's because I think at your second meeting, you all dug in and began identifying attributes that should be present, valid and authentic for, you know, I can't remember what they all addressed, but you were starting to define attributes of performance assessment that I think create a backdrop for design. You know, once you refine that and you bring it into, yes, we think these attributes are essential. What does embedding mean so that this is a seamless experience for candidates and something that faculty must do in order to help their candidates get a credential and demonstrate readiness, all these things. You're defining attributes here, and you're identifying roadblocks that the current three have, we've got 20 years of experience with now. We can see the roadblocks. And you've got some chomping at the bit at the commission table to remove those roadblocks. As Adam said, if we can remove any right now, all of Cal TPA, every form of Cal TPA right now is open for revision. And our goal for July 1 is that we've taken in as many of the flexibilities as we possibly can that were identified and tried with the LPA for Cal TPA. And that by July 1, we've got something that has been as informed as we can make it with the low-hanging fruit. And that includes addressing condition codes as early as possible, so our contractor knows what they're designing around, so that every sponsor knows what they have to design around right now. July 1 is a critical date. We all have to have literacy performance assessments out there. We don't want to condition code people out. So that's, we're in the open space right now for the current models. And when you make recommendations to the commission and the staff brings a work plan forward, we are in the opening stages of what 3.0 might look like based on this. And I'm hearing, I think part of your meeting today is to really dig in some more on what does local scoring look like. And again, drawing back to your second meeting, the attributes of design that programs could work with to innovate in this space and build their own. So I'll stop talking now. Last words. I won't say another word today.
I don't believe it.
Moving on to interim action 5, and I have an update to this slide because I got an email from evaluation systems. But interim action 5 is to ensure a system of notification is in place for candidates that fall within the secondary passing standard that includes simultaneous notification to the preparation program and clear information for candidates and programs regarding the process for demonstrating readiness by alternate means. And so this is just making sure that candidates and programs for candidates who receive that secondary passing standard know exactly what they need to do. So with Cal TPA, we've been working with evaluation systems to revise the notification that gets sent to candidates and programs, making sure that that revised version provides very specific guidelines of actions for the candidates to take. It's very clear. We currently have a draft circulating. There's been quite some discussion within or among CTC staff. And at TPA, there is a notification that Lori said went out today to at TPA or candidates who submitted to Ed TPA and received results that fell within that secondary passing standard. So, progress is being made on this one.
Is that the first communication those candidates will have received? But previously they didn't have that.
I have to answer that for sure. Do we know? I believe so. No. One last June.
Okay.
Thanks, Reggie.
Thank you. Okay, interim action 6. This is to issue a notification to all programs identifying their TPA first-time pass rates based on both scorable and non-scorable submissions and provide evidence-based recommendations for strengthening candidate supports and guidance to reduce or eliminate candidate condition codes. So I would say I don't feel like we've made as much progress on this one. One thing that is important to note, the programs that do use Cal TPA or Ed TPA do currently have access to those pass rates within Results Analyzer. But as we shared with Interim Action 4, the new data reporting standards are under development. Once those are established, we'll be able to provide more accurate score reports, hopefully in a really timely manner, targeted to programs. Okay, and our final interim action is to continue to present up-to-date progress to the Commission. We'll be doing that at the April 10th meeting. Right.
All right, we will now open the public comment for this section 3A of our meeting. If there are any members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card, raising your hand icon on Zoom, or pressing *9. Are there any public comments? Do any work group members have any further questions or comments before we move to the next item? With that, we'll move to 4A. 5A.
And so now we're going to, I'm wondering how we're doing. Are we okay to continue and then take a little break and a little, maybe like what, in the next 30 minutes?
Maybe we'll take a break. I just asked Adam the same thing. Break as we transition into the breakout rooms.
Perfect. Right. So we're going to take an opportunity to do a deep dive with one of the TPAs. And so I'm going to pass it to commission staff to inform us on the process.
Okay, so I'm actually excited because when I set out my aspirational timeline for this afternoon, we weren't this far ahead. So we're great. That means we're going to get a little bit more time for our TPA deep dive. Yay. When we first envisioned this item, we really had the hope of engaging all work group members in sort of a light calibration. But we realized that that takes a lot of time, and as you know, we have a lot to do. So then we said, okay, well, we'll do this deep dive, and then really kind of mapping out the timeline. I've started to call it internally our shallow dive, but still hopeful that it will be beneficial to just get in and see what the TPAs look like. So we have basically the rest of the afternoon for this time. What this is going to look like, you all, as you saw in emails, you've been assigned to a TPA model. You'll go into a breakout room. In that room, you'll hear from the model sponsor. This will be a high-level overview of the model that you're engaging with. And then on your own, you'll have some time to review that model. And we have some options that you might consider for how to use that time. Then in your small group, you'll engage in a debrief of the model where you'll talk about highlights from your review, wonderings that you have. And then we'd like you to discuss to what extent is the model valid and authentic to the work of teaching. And that comes from our language that we've used. Reasonable to implement in a wide range of classroom settings and appropriate for, I know because we, please the next slide, sorry. We talked about the pre-beginning teachers because we're actually asking candidates to take this before they are beginning teachers. So pre-beginning teachers / candidates at the end of their preparation program. Asking you to prepare a slide with your group that you will then present to the whole group in a whole group debrief. So, and so also you'll want to select a spokesperson. So those review options. What we'd like to have you do is everybody in here was a classroom teacher at some point, and that classroom teacher hat, and engage with the TPA version that aligns with your area of teaching. So for me, I was a high school English teacher. I would look at the single subject English and then perhaps complete a task as if you were a candidate for that grade or content area using some make-believe data. Or Brent, or as a follow-up, you might then use ChatGPT to score your task using the corresponding rubric. As you have the copy of the rubric, you can plug it in. Another option, just to see what would happen, have ChatGPT generate a response to the task and then score or review the task with the corresponding rubric. You might also compare the model TPA tasks with the TPA specifications in Ed Code 44320.2 or the Performance Assessment Design Standard 1. You all were sent a link to a folder that has all the documents. It also has a breakdown of the instructions with the links to these documents. Again, as you review, you want to consider to what extent the TPA is valid and authentic to the work of teaching, reasonable to implement in a wide range of classroom settings, and appropriate for beginning teachers or candidates. And just again, a reminder that early on in our work groups, we spent a lot of time kind of unpacking what that valid and authentic to the work of teaching means. So if you look at the agenda item 4A, Appendix B, Adam is playing Vanna. So that was the one that was, it's included in your handouts for today. That provides our work group definition of valid and authentic to the work. Any questions about that? You're being asked to do? Just a reminder of our group. Oh, that's right. Cal TPA, we have Kate, Vanessa, Colin, Tina, Bev, Rebecca, and Shayna. That's in room 151. Ed TPA is Ursula, Devin, Ben, Mandy, Jason, and Patricia. That's in room 152. And then for FAST, Lisa, Tori, Matt, Brent, Al, Talia, Kathy, Joshua, and Linda. Room 153.
And Juliet, just like before, if we want to change groups, that's not a problem, right? Okay, thank you.
Again, there are the breakout rooms. So I think at this point it's 2:33. So I start at
2:45.
That's what I was thinking. Options. Thank you. Great question. So we're asking you to come back about 4:25. Wrap up about 4:20, yourselves 5 minutes, be back in the room for 4:25 for share outs from each group.
So in that time, we should try the task.
Yeah.
Grade the task.
Yep.
And then come up with comments together that produce a slide of our reactions to that experience.
Yes. And if you send a representative from your group, I will share, I will share the link to that slide. I have a slide deck prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, we start at 2:45.
2:45. All right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to engage in dialogue. We have 23 minutes. This is going to be amazing. We are going to go through the 3 different model types. We're going to provide your information on your slides and kind of a quick debrief of what you did. So keeping in mind about 5 minutes for each group. And then after that, we'll open up for public comment and then also for work group comments after that. So that's our task in the next 20 minutes. We can do it. I believe in you. All right.
Teaching right there. There we go, Mandy. You got it, Mandy.
23 minutes.
All right. And just for the good of the order, why don't we follow the order that it was designed in?
Is just alphabetical.
Perfect. So Cal TPA, let's start with you.
You wrote it, so I know you shouldn't have to say it, but you can say it.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, glasses. Okay. So we started and we just have wondering. We had a really wonderful presentation about Cal TPA, and there's so much to commend about the work that they are doing to create a responsive and thoughtful assessment. It was mentioned more than once that the folks who are working on Cal TPA are in the moment, really revising to make it make more sense for educators and to be more supportive of educators. So definitely we needed to start with that. After taking about 12 seconds on ChatGPT, we came to the conclusion that a great deal of Cal TPA can be outlined and supported by AI, but also kind of done by AI. in ways that would be hard to detect, and we can have conversations about the authenticity of AI detectors and things like that at some point, and I'm excited to. But it led us to several wonderings. And so we're wondering, is there a way to embed an verbal, local, panel-based assessments to authenticate or ensure validity of assessment? Could this kind of reflection replace an element of the Cal TPA? For example, the written reflection, which ChatGPT can do, and a person would need to evaluate afterwards, but still. Can time with mentors and operating teachers become a larger lever for authenticity, knowing that inauthentically generated text is really ungovernable? We wanted to know how we can encourage supervising teachers to engage with Cal TPA in meaningful ways. Our presenter was the superstar of superstars for doing that. And how do we get everyone at that level? If that's possible at all, and maybe not. Is there a more engaging Socratic method of questioning and reflection that credential candidates can participate in? And that kind of gets to our kind of reflections at the bottom. And then, can we reflect on the induction model of panel interviews to learn from them, and then revise the easily generated portions that have also been indicated as pain points for teachers? So you're spending 32 hours writing something or using ChatGPT to write it in 7 minutes, and neither of which is really an authentic reflection of your ability to teach in a classroom. So thinking about valid and authentic to the work of teaching, it got really quiet at that point because we used AI. Filming seems valid. This could be, the entire process could be smaller and more adaptable to leverage higher, more intimate encounters with stakeholders. And that can be balanced with something like filming, where an outside group would evaluate to give that, what we were saying might be more statistically reliable data. We recommend that there's an expert group in the future to flesh that out, right? It needs time to kind of think about and unpack. Reasonability. There are local tasks that align to the same goals that could be more authentic, so more intimate, and in person and less duplicative. And then this could use some wordsmithing, so I apologize. There could be an appropriate version of this that combines the authentic filming portions and possibly even lesson planning with a panel conversation that would replace the time-consuming writing and duplicative work that matches core credentialing work. That's it. Tried their best.
Great job. All right. Yep. Did anyone else want to add to Cal TPA before we move to the next link? Great work. All right. So looking at the Ed TPA model, some of the highlights and things that people saw as we were reflecting on it is that there is a faculty feedback tool that's very helpful, and if utilized could actually alleviate most of the condition codes. The Ed TPA is working on a modular approach, which we've been talking about over the last few months. It's not yet ready. It won't be available till fall of 2026, but it sounded promising. The current model of the Ed TPA requires the same group of students to be used on all tasks. But then we did discover that you're actually able to resubmit individual tasks that you get a low score on, but it doesn't have to be that same group of students. You can do it with another group of students. So allowing people to only redo the parts that they didn't do well on. The 4 or 5 tasks, depending upon which credential you're looking at, the tasks are very streamlined. They seem fairly simplistic and straightforward, but the questions themselves seem to lack clarity. There was a feeling that the 15 to 20-minute video segment is restrictive, that sometimes for it to be an authentic lesson, it can take more than 20 minutes to get to the full learning process. And that some of the questions and tasks that are being asked are very high level, which may not be appropriate for someone who hasn't actually started teaching yet. And just for a point of information, in case you didn't know, EdTPA actually has 2 different websites. So we found different resources on the different ones, different intended user groups. There's a .com and a .org. The .com's for the candidates, and the .org is more for the organizations providing the services. So there were things that we didn't realize existed because we were looking at the wrong one. Some of the wonderings: how many programs are actually using that faculty feedback resource? And the ones that are they seeing positive results because of that? So it allows candidates to, or it allows faculty to use the same type of structure that the actual EdTPA is, and then actually give them feedback on multiple different assignments, and then they can do it at the end as well. So actually giving feedback on the tool itself through that faculty feedback piece. The next question was how much time is being spent developing answers to these complex questions that could be addressed in a conversation, kind of like what Kathleen was just talking about, or a panel discussion, right? There was a question about why the rubrics aren't embedded in the task, that maybe if the rubric was actually right next to the question, candidates would be more successful at answering the whole of the question and avoiding those condition codes. How does the EdTPA share out the available resources? There are far more resources than I think a lot of the people in the room realized. Just maybe accessibility is a concern, or just a lack of knowledge that they exist. And then another question that came up is there a way to look at data regarding who uses the faculty feedback tool as a resource, what their success rate is, and maybe being able to share that among the group or among the different providers. And then the question came up, what if candidates could just directly access that tool and not have to go through their faculty? Might that be a valuable opportunity? As far as valid and authentic, there's only one video requirement. There's opportunities for more video submissions, but the question just kept coming up, how can it be authentic to meet all of the tasks in all of the rubrics in that very finite period of time, right? And then the lesson planning templates, all of the writing that's required in all of the different tasks, those just aren't typical behaviors in the daily life of a teacher. And so then the authenticity piece was coming up. All the documentation required, again, that's not something that teachers do on a daily basis, but it's something we're requiring of candidates because it just wouldn't be sustainable, right? The next one, we were looking at reasonableness to implement. Task 2 in particular lacks flexibility for all settings, creating a disadvantage for candidates in particular settings, which is evidenced by the current results of teacher candidates. And then also just thinking about how would candidates who are differently abled be able to access the tasks and how might that impact them. And then the last one was looking at how appropriate is it for pre-service, right? So there was discussion about some of it seemed reasonable, and then we were kind of debating there's so much time being spent on writing and not the actual act of teaching. But overall, everyone really appreciated the simplicity. The task seemed, we understood for the most part what was being asked of candidates. Anyone want to add to?
Yeah, definitely took a lot away. And I think one thing we kind of mentioned and talked about was like the importance of the support that candidates get with taking the TPA. And if the program sponsor is not providing enough support, are there alternative areas where they could, perhaps we talked about the TPA being that resource to help candidates work through some of the things if their program is not providing the support they feel they need. So I just wanted to mention that.
All right, and now FAST.
I'm gonna start with fast by saying that we're absolutely stunned, I think. Saw as deeply local program model, a buy-in in all sorts of ways. It was deeply integrated in different aspects of the collaboration program. And that they had really worked hard in it to embed these sort of cycles into the experience of being there with your mentor teacher, your cooperating teacher, and having feedback part of the process, including the ability to even redo, rethink, revise, let's say from day 7 or day 5 to day 7 or 8. Like, it just was so clear that this was a part and parcel of the actual authentic experience of what I've done before, which is called supervising candidates in the field. And all of us had done ourselves, seen. So we were, I think, stunned. 2 projects are embedded in supervision and coaching. So again, the idea is supervision and coaching are not separate or not kind of an add-on or just a place to do something, but rather like it's connected. Formative in nature continually came up as a theme as we listened to a really interesting presentation from Susie. We said faster grading or turnaround time than other TPAs. It's almost instantaneous. I mean, you kind of in a way walk away from having done it, and then the next day you reflect, and then after you reflect, you're like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, and there's an opportunity to do it again. We like the idea of the preponderance of evidence for the holistic judgment of the meet standards category. So rather than talk about averages or sort of playing with 12 rubrics, trying to figure out like how you can pass people, there was a discussion about, you know, if you're a 1 or you're 4, okay, but really it's where are you generally overall? And we thought that was an interesting way to frame it, preponderance of the evidence for the judgment. We had some wonderings about the model. I'm not sure that we got all of the wonderings as exhaustively as some of the other groups, but I do think we have some. What are the validation efforts from prototype to operational phases? We were curious about what types of evidence for validity and reliability and fairness count as sufficient for who and for whom. And we made it very clear to the presenters that that was not only their challenge, that was probably something we were wondering about elsewhere. But we did wonder, for example, greater reliability. How do you play with that? What do you do with it? How do you report it? How do you understand how to improve it? How much is the FAST experience or process tied to each teacher, candidate, supervisor, or coach? Because we saw that deep interrelationship between the two. And then we thought a lot about, well, it depends a lot on the quality of your supervisor or coach, and that could have a really positive effect. But for example, if you needed to appeal something, was it possible to say, I don't agree with my supervisor's take on my TPA? And yes, in fact, there is a mechanism for appeal and discussion, which I thought was kind of cool. I think we all did. Sorry to use I. What is the mentor cooperating teacher's role in the FAST process? Again, unpacking that, making more sense of it. How would that transfer across different locations and different spaces? But this example, president. What are the advantages and disadvantages to local scoring? Of course, we asked that and we got some great answers. How are they different from programs that don't have local scoring? And again, just wondering in general what the implications are for local scoring. One of the things we heard was that, yes, these are locally scored and they're scored by people who know the candidate, who've worked with the candidate. And that embeddedness, again, leads to a certain kind of formative feedback. So that was interesting. Puts a lot more onus on the engagement of the people in the system, the stakeholders with the so-called TPA. All right. We didn't do as well because we got really off into philosophical discussions. I was not the one who knows. They were the chat GPT thing came up and we didn't play as deeply inside of the space with the tools, but I think we.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Please speak now, because you did. So what did you see? Why don't you take us to that?
So I just got caught up in the whole chat GPT thing. And so what I did was I took the I was looking at the mild moderate fast, and I looked at the planning task, and I literally programmed chat GPT to do the planning task all the way through, including assessing itself. Of course, it gave itself 4s, but you know. I chose the planning phase because that would be the space where you would think you couldn't do it, because you would have to have the class and you would have to have the, you know, the students would have to have certain characteristics. But, you know, I come from a place where I could say, hey, let's do a 7th grade class of mild moderate with typical learning needs and, diverse students. And it gave me a list of 10 students, gave me their names, and you could tell who was Black and who was Hispanic, by the names. And it was just
stereotyped kids. Okay,
they
sorry.
did. ChatGPT knows how to do that. And, it was really interesting because it gave like the learning needs, the disability, it gave the description of Maya has difficulty understanding basic math concepts such as multiplication, division, and fractions. She struggles with memorizing math facts and tends to get anxious about math assignments. She benefits from using visual aids, manipulatives, and step-by-step written instructions. It gave me 10 students with that kind of detail. And then the next step, of course, with the lesson plan, that was fun. I told it to do a 7th grade lesson plan on division for this particular class. And it did exactly that. It was able to plug everything into it was insane. I was absolutely, this is nuts.
So while our colleague was off having fun in a philosophical conversation, so let me ask you, colleague, we did say, I think, in the group that we felt like it was valid and authentic to the work of teaching, that is the FAST, in part because the formative feedback from coaches during live classroom teaching and live reflection could not be mimicked or pre-gamed by such a tool, but in fact required engagement with human-to-human interaction. And the other thing we were really excited about was the several opportunities to revise during the teaching process. Another way of saying the same thing. It's this idea that it was connected, live, happening in the instructional phase, not the planning or necessarily the reflection problem.
Right. And then the other thing about it is, again, I came from a space where I actually, had enough knowledge to tell it what to do and to tell it how to think, basically. I told it how to think about it. So, there's that, right?
Something in on there. I think another important part of the conversation that we turned into was, again, how AI and technology is supporting our understandings of what questions to ask. So if you are asking a question that can be answered by a bot, right? And perhaps we need to move towards, using technology, using AI as a tool, but changing the answer or changing the question that we're asking so that students, teachers, whoever is being that brain, because AI can't replace brains. We still need brains to operate the technology and the tool. But that's a can be a scary but also very futuristic opportunity to change teacher performance assessments.
Help and assist people with writing or their, that kind of thing. Because again, when something is heavy on the writing and people just don't necessarily have the same schema, and there are, diversity issues also in terms of how subjective it can be to assess somebody's writing.
So on the last 2 points before we open it up for questions and thoughts, our team found also that we didn't have time to go over the reasonableness to implement in a wide range of classroom settings. So we didn't probe on that with the Fresno person, and we were curious about that. And the last thing about appropriate for beginning teachers, I don't know that we all talked about that, but maybe right now we could all agree, of course. I mean, FAST is quite solid with respect to that. So anyways, yeah, we learned a lot from FAST. Thank you.
Wonderful. So with that, we will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to comment, please notify the meeting moderator. Are there any public comments? Do any work group members have any questions or comments in these 30 seconds?
I just wanted to share, I'm glad you brought up the AI stuff because districts are investing in AI tools and it's becoming part of practice to work with AI to do lesson planning and coming up with different ideas and resources. So it's going to become a practical skill set that teachers and incoming candidates will need to actually be familiar with.
Just to echo that, I believe you all are better on legislation than I am. There's a bill that's coming through. Has it yet been passed? That's actually going to be about AI literacy in preparation for California
schools, is there not? There's something coming through the pipeline.
You know about this?
Oh, no, I haven't seen it on the docket that we're tracking, but that doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yeah. I could try to.
Kathleen,
Probably.
I think it's, I mean, if I had to guess, but don't put money on it, it'll be pushed into literacy for history classes, like critical literacy in terms of source and evaluating sources.
It's gonna be cordoned off into that little space until it breaks out again.
Yeah. It's gonna be everywhere. It's already.
Well, we're not limited by what the legislature does.
Oh, we're not.
I am, but none of the rest of them.
Mike.
Well, I mean, I just circulated to some of you that I have text or contact for is a resource from the California, it's the Council on the Accreditation of Educator Preparation CAPE on AI and the uses of it. And they're not crying and wringing their hands. They've got a more optimistic view about how to do it and what to do with it. And it may be along the kinds of lines you're talking about, Elisa, is getting ahead of it so you can plan accordingly. I may be too old. I don't know. Let's see.
Email that to
Yeah.
My 90-year-old grandmother, how to use computers. Anybody can.
All right, so with that, next item is 6A, closing remarks. Are there any closing remarks from representatives of the commission?
You here?
Shireen is.
I think she left.
Shireen have to.
Shireen.
Oh, there she is.
Hey folks, very, very interesting. I loved hearing about how you use ChatGPT to create student profiles and address the TPA. I wish I was able to sit in and actually see that in progress, but excellent discussion. Thank you. Thanks.
That is awesome.
Danette Brown, would you like to make any comments? You're muted.
I'm out of Zoom practice. Just thank you for the continued work and thank you for letting me listen in to some of that great conversation. Thank you.
Comments from staff or?
Anything?
Nothing.
I just want to say this was, my day started filled with joy and sunlight and couldn't wait to get here. I got a couple of email about 2 PM and thought, oh my God, I just, what am I going to do? This conversation has pulled me right back up to the joy space, whatever that's worth. I appreciate you all taking the time. I appreciate Lori and Marissa and was it Lisa? Susie from Fresno, taking the time again, having spent now, this is our 6th meeting. It's different. You have a whole different frame of reference than you did on meeting 2. And what you all did with that is fascinating. And I'm really intrigued by the things that you surfaced. I think I don't know. I just feel energized by it. Hanging with y'all today. Thanks for getting me back out of the doldrums. Appreciate it.
And I want to say this was the free version of ChatGPT. Just need to no.
How many advanced units going to give you 10 years?
All right, so to frame your reference for tomorrow, we have a big task ahead of us tomorrow. So we are going to be finalizing our draft of Focus Area 3, and then we are going to start to digest your recommendations for Focus Area 4. They've been very nicely organized so that we can see if there are areas that overlap that we could reduce and rewrite. So please come prepared and ready to tackle those big tasks tomorrow as we head into kind of the final phase of everything ahead of us. And with that, we'll be together at 8:30 in the morning back here. If you need anything, please reach out to Juliet overnight. He can't wait. And with that, have a wonderful evening. This now concludes the work group meeting for today, and we'll see you in the morning.